Hello and welcome to Nutrition and Alternative Medicine. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Today's show was brought to you by whalewisdomretreats.com. Imagine taking your next vacation in one of the top 10 places that you can swim with wild dolphins and whales. Do you want to know where those top 10 places are? Go to whalewisdomretreats.com and download your free report that tells you exactly where these places are that almost guarantees you're able to swim with wild dolphins and maybe some whales. Again, that's whalewisdomretreats.com. And Ann Gordon, who was on the show last week, is the one who runs those retreats. She actually also does a free end-of-the-month dolphin healing session. So if you want to learn more about that, that's actually coming up this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, 2018. You'll find more information about all of that in last week's episode. So make sure to check that out. You can also find out more through whalewisdomretreats.com. Another announcement I would like to quickly make is that Michael Neely's event is coming up. Michael is part of my team for Releasing What Weighs You Down. And we did a show a few weeks ago about uncovering your hidden talent and expertise. For those of you that are either, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get your message out there, or if you're someone who thinks you have a book inside of you and you're trying to find it, everybody could get benefit from coming to the event. And of course, because I'm part of Michael's team as well, you get a special discount. You even can get a scholarship to come for free. So if you go to michaelneely.com/JJ, and I'll spell out Michael Neely for you. It's Michael, like regular Michael, Michael. Neely is Neeley. So michaelneely.com/JJ to get to the page for the event. And if you want to take advantage of the scholarship, then you use a discount code for $100 off the cheapest price, which is $197. So the discount code is JJ. And that will take off $100 off of the $197. And then because you're coming through me, you'll actually get that $97 back when you come to the event. It's just a seat deposit to make sure that you show up. So michaelneely.com/JJ, and then use the code JJ if you want to come play with us and expand your brand. Figure out if speaking from stage or podcasting or writing a book or leading telesummits is something you're interested in, both from a entrepreneurial side, or even if you just have a message inside of you that you're not clear about yet. Giving yourself the time and space to unpack what might be inside of you is needed in order for you to get clarity about what's inside. So I definitely recommend you come. I will be there. Would love to see you. Again, michaelneely.com/JJ. Today's show, Overcoming Mindless Night Eating, might seem like a very surface topic for some of you. It's because I've been doing such deeper emotional relationship related things, but let's not forget that I come from a health and wellness beginning. And one of the things that I see over and over again is people unconsciously doing things, or even consciously, but not understanding the brain connection to why some of the habits are harder to overcome than others. And actually, this topic was already recorded with this person. So Rita Black, who is my guest today, and I recorded a first version of this show today when I first started my podcast back in 2014. So that episode actually is really hard to hear, and I had to try to fix the audio back then. So I apologize for those of you that may have attempted to listen to it, but that's exactly why I wanted to redo it and publish it again, because I believe that there's information here that can benefit everyone. And I wanted to make sure those of you that are looking for ways to reduce your emotional eating get this information. Rita just finished a book, and I'll tell you all about that. Rita Black is a renowned clinical hypnotherapist, author, seminar leader, speaker, and expert in the psychology of weight management and smoking cessation. For the past 2 decades, Rita has helped clients from all over the world find freedom and health with her hypnosis-based stop smoking in one session process and her shift weight mastery process. Rita is currently the director of Shift Hypnosis and has been featured on CBS News, NBC, and ABC. Rita knows the struggle with weight personally. For almost 20 years, she struggled up and down on the scale 40 plus pounds. She finally found freedom from the pain, frustration, and weight with the use of hypnosis. Her mission is to help people shift out of their struggle with weight and themselves and into slim and healthy weight mastery. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and 2 children. Welcome back to the show, Rita.
Well, I'm happy to be here, JJ. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. It's been a long time. I know you've been in the cave writing your book. I haven't heard from you or seen anything about you for a couple of years. And I'm really excited to revisit this show that we originally recorded back in 2014, I believe, when I launched the Fit to Love podcast the very first time. And I know, for those of you that aren't podcasters and those of you that have gone back to listen to some of my earliest shows on the original channel, Fit to Love, you know that some of the audio quality wasn't as good as it is now. And this was one of those shows, and I'm so excited to be able to redo it for you and update it. So not just about redoing. So for those of you that did listen, and we're trying to listen really hard and really intently because the audio is really low on Rita's side. It's my fault. I tried to fix the quality and it became really low. Today's show is going to be awesome because it's not only a redo of that, it's an update of where she is, where I am, and where you are. So Rita, let's talk about, before we get into overcoming mindless night eating. A lot of the audience that listens to my shows, we have a very mind, body, soul approach. And so there's the spiritual piece, which for a lot of people is really important. There's the, behavioral psychology, hypnotherapy, subconscious mind and conscious mind piece, which I definitely talk about. And then of course there's the alternative medicine and health and wellness part. And not everyone is as interested in that. And while we're going to talk about that today, everybody has addictions. Everybody numbs themselves in some way, and food is probably the biggest one. So I definitely want to see if we can't incorporate some of those principles into this version of today's show.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think in writing my book and really diving deeper into what I call weight mastery, but you could call it self-mastery, I really looked at, how the brain works around what you're talking about is just really creating something, like so often when we're trying to get rid of something like a night eating or an addiction or something, we see it as something that is shameful, and we see ourselves as somewhat of a failure, or we see ourselves in a negative light. And I think so much of what came out of writing my book in the journey forward to what I call weight mastery is this idea of self-mastery and really creating a much more powerful relationship with ourselves. And I think that starts with identity. And I think when we struggle with things, I think our identity with that particular thing becomes very negative. And so I always now, from when I speak, start from the root of just how we see ourselves and moving forward from there, which I think starts from our relationship with ourselves.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. So I'm excited that this will be a new updated version of this topic for my listeners and for me and with you, because we've done some shows before. And I'd love to hear, just before we get started into this topic, if there's any lessons that you learned while writing your book, new insights that you had about some of the materials that you've presented before and how you've done it, and anything new and exciting, like a new twist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really speaking to this idea of identity, I think in my journey of writing a book, I feel like I came up against a lot of my own personal limiting beliefs and fears about putting something out, and about like my ability to publish a book and have a full-time practice and all of those things. And also my insights into the weight struggle, it really correlated, because I think so often it really does come back to this feeling of how we see ourselves. And often, in order to finish the book, I had to create an incredibly powerful vision that was not based on just writing a book, but it was like, really, how do I, get my message out to people in a powerful way and really reach people and be of service to them. And I think when we're struggling with our weight, we get very isolated, and in similar ways, we get into limiting beliefs and negative self-talk that really keeps us from really what I believe weight mastery is about, which is is being our best selves and getting over those beliefs so that we can be out in the world serving, in our best way possible. Because when we're being of service, I think we're the happiest. And I when I work with clients, I really ask them what now their bigger why is. Like, what is your deepest why? Why do you want to release weight other than releasing weight? What is it that you want to really create in your life out in the world? And once people really see it from that perspective, see it as like really going for that, reaching deep within themselves to engage with that higher self, then all the littler struggles, the limiting beliefs seem to melt away, because they start to see their cause as something bigger, right? It's not just about releasing weight, but it's about modeling powerful behavior for their children, or being able to be of more service to their families or to their community, or to be able to go back to school and get that degree that they never got. Do you see what I'm saying about that?
Oh, absolutely. It's finding that deeper purpose. We tend to look on the outside, and definitely over the years of doing this show, I've learned so much about so many things. And one of the things that sticks out to me about, weight mastery and weight loss is that a lot of people are numbing their feelings through food. And it's really about, and that's part of the addiction, but what is it that they're repressing? What is it that you're afraid of? And once you can identify, like you said, a bigger purpose other than you, and you release that fear or limiting belief that you can't get there or that you can't do it, then all of a sudden that fear goes away and you're not needing to repress it. It's because you're living it and you've stepped into it. And I think allowing yourself to release the anxiety or the fear, like you said, the limiting beliefs, definitely. And I'm big on that for, every age. I think that I talk a lot in the show about women over the age of 45 and 50 whose children are gone and they're away, and now all of a sudden they're left sort of purposeless. And I don't mean that in the, like, of course everyone has a purpose, but if you're just a mom and a wife, and now all of a sudden your children are grown, you're left with thinking, what am I doing? And so there's a lot of depression that happens, I think, besides just menopause, that happens to women once they're empty nesters, because they've been so dedicated to their children that they don't know what their individual purpose is on the planet.
Exactly. And so, what their bigger purpose was, which was raising their children, obviously you continue to raise your children after they're out of the house, and have a relationship with them. But your purpose sort of shifts. And it for a lot of people, they can get very isolated. And that's why I do feel also that community, in my program, I have a community, and being able to connect with other people, but also, like you're saying, it's taking those next steps and really asking yourselves, asking the powerful questions. I think that is the other thing that I think, when we see how we use our brain, often the way we get stuck into a lot of negative, critical self speak that is almost like, we call it the old tapes playing over and over again. I know you and I have talked about that. And if you can shift the nature of the way you communicate with yourself into what I call, your inner coach, instead of listening to this critic or listening to the rebel, which is like, we'll start again tomorrow, or go ahead and eat that, eat that, that's going to make you feel better. When, we know time and time again that each time we've eaten that, it hasn't made us feel better. But if we can connect more with our more inner coach, and a lot of my clients who have children, I say, what is the tone and what is the way that you speak to your children, and starting to turn that powerful, nurturer, empathetic person in on yourself, to start to really be on your own team. And something in writing the book, JJ, I really got into was self-forgiveness, because I think when we're struggling with our weight, and like you said, when we're numbing out with food, a lot of times we have this very low opinion of ourselves. We see ourselves as that we aren't in control, and that we need to be controlled somehow. And instead of really forgiving ourselves for struggling and recognizing that we can move forward from here, but we have to start with self-forgiveness in order to get on our own team, and to believe like, well, you know what? I really believe in myself. I know I can step out of this place and start to, like we're going to talk about night eating, I can I can solve this. This is a problem that can be solved. And I believe in myself. And I know my ability to solve this problem is 100%. I can believe in myself 100%. I'm going to be able to do this versus like, wow, like I'm really out of control and I really just have to pull it together at night and, just not eat anything, because that's usually the attitude we go at it with is like, I'm out of control. I'm bad and wrong. I need to be fixed versus, I'm powerful. And if I can, I need to forgive myself. I need to recognize I'm human. I can get on my own team and move forward from here in a powerful way. And I can solve my night eating problem. I've raised my children. I've provided, and got them, from point A to point B, or, if you don't have children, I look at all the stuff that you've done in your life. You're powerful, so you can solve night eating. And so it's really creating a new identity of yourself as somebody who's like, I'm going to, somebody who is a conqueror and a problem solver, and having a can-do attitude about it can immediately shift your brain because identity is everything. When we see ourselves in a particular light, we act from that. It predicts our future. So if we see ourselves as a struggler, then we're going to perpetuate that identity. But if we see ourselves as somebody who's mastering our lives, who's learning, who's problem solving, then it changes our ability, our brain's ability to relax, open up, and really see things and ask ourselves questions like, oh, well, I see that I reach for the snacks immediately after dinner. Why do I do that? And how could I finish dinner and go and relax in a way that's going to take better care of me? That immediately opens your brain up in a different way rather than, don't eat after dinner because you have to pull it together, because that it really does not do anything but perpetuate negative self-speak, which is a habit which creates zero possibility of change.
I want to review for those people who haven't heard you on the show earlier as I started the Fit to Love podcast, and go over sort of the idea of hypnotherapy and hypnosis and what it is that you do in the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. Can you give everyone just a brief overview of that concept? And then we're going to dive into the steps of overcoming mindless night eating.
Yes. What hypnosis is a very relaxed mind technique that allows more of your unconscious mind to be open to ideas of change, to really do deeper change work. 12% of our mind, really only 12% of our mind is our conscious, critical, analytical part of the mind. And most of the time, when you want to make a change, that's really how much of your brain power you have working for you. Your subconscious mind is really about 88% of your mind's power, right? So that's your beliefs, your habits, your memory. So if you're the part that protects you, the reptilian brain, our impulses, all our emotions, all of those things are in our subconscious mind. So when typically, like for instance, you want to make a change, we'll go about it using really only 12% of our mind. So what hypnosis is a tool, and just to kind of give you a little more background about the brain. So like from the time we're born until our 20s, our brain is really busy imprinting everything, what our parents tell us, our surroundings, our environment, what we learn in school, our interactions with our peers. All of those things are imprinted, and we really create what a powerful filter with how we see the world, so everybody has their own imprint. And so by the time we get to our 20s, a lot of our concepts and our opinions are set, and our beliefs and how we see ourselves and how we see the world are pretty set. Those filters are pretty powerfully in place. And that's why we probably have the challenge we do in Washington, D.C. Everybody's very set in their ways, and there's, very little room for change. What hypnosis and the state of hypnosis, there's a critical filter that develops, like I said, around in our 20s, that is now going to filter. And it's a protection device, really, so that, because if we were open to everything that was going on in all the, because just think of the millions of pieces of information that come into our brain every day. Our brain needs a very powerful filter device in order for us not to be in chaos all the time. So it's not that this filter is horrible or bad or wrong, but when it comes to making change, it can be a challenge to make change because this filter is so in place. So what hypnosis allows is in that state, that filter becomes relaxed. So the mind, the subconscious mind, our beliefs, our habits, the way we see ourselves in the world is more pliable and more open to ideas of change. So in hypnosis, we're presenting ideas, and we're really, if you want to even think of your brain as like all these little tracks that are like little GPSs, and that what hypnosis does is allows us to go and sort of intercept those tracks, the negative or limiting ones, and really offer new alternative routes, so that we're really opening up your mind to new ideas and concepts or new habits, really refocusing the mind on habits. So I know with JJ, because I'm sure you do a lot of this work in meditation and the hypnosis and all the stuff that you do with your clients, there are ways of using your brain really powerfully using hypnosis, but also just in your day-to-day life there. And this is, when we get into the night eating, I'm going to talk through some of the ways you can just use your mind more effectively to create change. And using your subconscious mind more effectively in your day-to-day life. Because once you know how to tap into your subconscious mind, whether it's through hypnosis or meditation or just using your mind in different ways, then you get that sense of self-mastery, that sense like, oh, okay, things can go wrong today, but I know how to put them right. Or this isn't going right in my life, but I know how to shift that around. And we don't take it personally like we're bad or at fault, but we're just like, oh, my brain has gotten a little off track here. Let me set myself on the right track.
So now looking at how someone has a problem with overeating at night, emotionally eating at night, feeling the impulse, the trigger to self-soothe through food, and has used willpower up until now in order to try to stop by just saying,
Right.
oh, I shouldn't. Let's talk about that in terms of what would be the steps and what would be the components someone would need to look at in order to, and this can be applied to anything. I'm taking the example of mindless night eating because I know it's such a habit. I've heard people say often that I do really good during the day, and then when I get to night, here is why I need help. So let's address why at night, all of a sudden. I think it's partly that self-soothing time because they're not busy and all of a sudden they're relaxed, and so those emotions are going to be able to start to come up and they're going to want to push them down, or they're going to want to not focus on how they feel. That's one aspect. But let's talk about it from your perspective on why that happens, why at night someone wants to all of a sudden grab food while they're watching television or just treat themselves. And not that we shouldn't be treating ourselves. Food is to be celebrated, but there's a difference between using food to celebrate and using food to numb. There's a difference between having a glass of wine and a bottle of wine. There's a difference between having a piece of something versus a whole bag of something. So let's talk about why that happens and the steps someone would need to take in order to in order to reprogram their brain in order to have that not be an impulse anymore.
For sure. Okay, so let's start with why this happens. There's multiple reasons from my perspective, and I think you're absolutely right, JJ. One of them is numbing. Going back to that idea of how the brain is set up, we have, our willpower part of our mind is really very, very limited. And by the time we reach about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, most of our impulse control, that willpower, has melted away. Our willpower is a limited resource that we have to kind of reset on a daily basis. Most of my clients come to me, they're like, I'm fine with breakfast. I'm fine with lunch. It's just, what happens when I get home. And I say, well, if we all went to bed at 5 o'clock, we would all be thin. Because, basically the stress of the day, getting in traffic, going to work, having to make decisions all day long pulls at that decision-making willpower part of our brain. So by the time we get home, our impulse control, any impulse control is pretty much nil and void. So I'm going to talk about how to address that in a few minutes when I walk through the steps, but that's one of the reasons I see that people are very challenged and much more challenged at night than they are during the day. Another reason is that we get into the habit, like JJ, you were talking about, like we get into that brain. The reward center in the brain is very, very powerful. Dopamine drives a lot of our behavior, and we get into these reward patterns that feel, people say, like I work with smokers too. And when a smoker expects a cigarette, they get this very agitated feeling, and they think it's because they're withdrawing from nicotine. But the actual physiological withdrawal from nicotine is a very mild process. Most people don't feel withdrawal from nicotine, but what they're feeling is their brain expecting that thing, that cigarette. Or with night eating in front of the TV, you might be sitting in front of the TV, you might have eaten dinner, you might be completely full, but there's this part of the brain that's going, I need that something, I need that something. There's this void to be filled, or that there's almost this agitated feeling like, something should be happening. And your mind will probably start to give you those ideas of that food, whatever that food is. And often it's very interesting with night eating. Most people night eat in patterns, meaning they'll finish dinner and then they might go start watching television. And it's usually the exact same times and places that they get up from the television and they go into the kitchen and they get something, and it's usually the same things. Like maybe they start with something salty and then they go to something sweet and then they go to something salty again. And so these patterns get set in the brain, and now the brain is expecting that that thing should occur, whether it's 4 glasses of wine, whether it's popcorn and then cereal and then some more popcorn, or so that's another thing. And so we just get into these patterns that are driven by dopamine, that's a very powerful urge. The other thing that is a challenge is the fact that a lot of times when we're trying to lose weight, we'll not eat. We won't eat like from lunch until we get home at night, in an attempt to like conserve calories or to be able to come home and eat. But the problem with that is then and JJ, I know you can speak to this, is like our blood sugar tank's so low that when we start eating, and typically if you pour yourself a glass of wine when you get home, or you start eating some crackers, those refined carbohydrates hit our stomach like rocket fuel, and then that sort of perpetuates really a feeling of being very hungry, and then we start feeding ourselves. We are hungry, but then it takes a long time for our stomach to register we're full, because when our blood sugar tanks, so does our leptin levels, and leptin is the satiety hormone, and so it takes a little while to register that we've eaten enough, and usually by the time we do register, we're full, we've eaten way too much. So these are some of the main reasons I see that we struggle with night eating. And of course, JJ is absolutely right. Our days are super duper structured, right? We go to work, we take the kids, we do this, we do that. And by the time we settle down after dinner time is usually very unstructured. Then it's that time that feelings can come to the surface. And again, we don't like to feel off. Our brain likes the status quo. So it will try anything to try to neutralize those feelings that might be coming up, feelings of loneliness or feelings of, anger about what happened that day. And then we're stuck without coping mechanisms other than this idea of eating to push down the feeling.
So in order to overcome this now obviously you mentioned the food piece, which I believe is, yes, it definitely is huge. It's funny though, over the last couple of years between the keto diet and intermittent fasting, I've noticed the quality of cravings. And I've always been promoting, I promote paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free living anyway. Mm-hmm. And when we look at some of the foods that, let's say, quote unquote, dieters are eating, people that aren't necessarily doing a keto or a paleo or a sort of a lower carb plan, when you have, and by the way, for everyone who hasn't heard some of those shows, every carbohydrate turns to sugar. And when we're looking at sugar, people say, oh, I don't eat sugar. But if you're having crackers, pasta, bread, that all turns to sugar. So do vegetables, but the vegetables have less sugar than, let's say, the piece of bread or the pasta or the potato or the rice. And so all that does turn to sugar. And if we're looking at, lower calories, it's not just about calories, it's that quality of your calories. And so if you're having something low calorie, but it's still full of carbohydrates, that's going to increase your insulin production. It's also going to increase your inflammation and possibly create those cravings of being hungry. So for me, I've taken it, since we've recorded that first show, I take a different stance on not on blood sugar. Absolutely, blood sugar is still an issue, but people aren't eating enough healthy fats, and they're still eating too many carbohydrates to turn to sugar. And counting calories is really not going to be the place where you're going to get. I mean, you can still do it, and calories are somewhat a factor, but it's really, again, the quality of those calories. What are you eating from? And a lot of people that I put on somewhat like keto paleo plan
Mhm.
find that they don't have any cravings anymore. So if you're having gluten or if you're having dairy and those two things you're sensitive to, they create cravings. So all of a sudden now you have constant cravings, and it's a biochemical issue, not an emotional issue. And if you remove the biochemical stuff, then all of a sudden you're left going, I'm not hungry anymore. I don't have that same craving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're adding more healthy fats, you're fuller longer. When I tried doing the keto diet at first, I was eating 2 meals a day because I wasn't
Mhm.
hungry, because I was
Yeah,
having so much good quality healthy fat that I was so satiated for so long. And night eating is not an issue for me, but I did notice that, I mean, I love food and I love eating and I love cooking, but I did notice how not hungry I was. So on the so there definitely is that biochemical piece as well as that emotional piece
absolutely.
and the hypnosis. So if somebody is not gluten-free, not dairy-free, not paleo, not keto, not willing to try anything different necessarily on the food plan, what would be your suggestions for them to habitually, brain-wise, self-talk wise, for them to start overcoming this urge to eat and to overeat at night?
For sure. So let me address that, and let me also address what you just said about ketogenic diet and the lower carbohydrate diet. I couldn't agree with you more. And in doing my book, I really dove deeper into the impact that carbohydrates have on our brain. And when we struggle with our weight, typically there's a spectrum of carb sensitivity that people are on. And I do agree with you, adding more healthy fat and protein, and this is something that I will address in the steps. But just as an addressing what you're saying and adding to it is that I believe that now that the brain gets wired, just like somebody gets wired to expect a certain amount of cigarettes a day. It literally, if somebody smokes 20 cigarettes a day, they will smoke 20 cigarettes every day. And I have seen in my clients, the ones who have gone on a lower carbohydrate regime, but then they will maybe indulge and get hooked back into eating carbohydrates again. It just like if somebody stops smoking, that part of the brain, the wires, the literal, like the priming of the wires, that goes dormant. So like what you're talking about, JJ, is like when you are eating a low carbohydrate diet, not only are you absolutely nourishing yourself and stabilizing yourself and creating amazing amounts of satiety where the cravings go away on a physiological level, but they also, what you're doing is that literally the neural pathways that are just primed for the carbohydrates, they go into dormancy. They literally, kind of go to rest, let's say. But then what happens is when we'll go and indulge, like for a couple of days eating more refined carbohydrates, they get reactivated. Just like if somebody who hasn't smoked for a year smokes a cigarette, that part of the brain gets reactivated again, and they will typically go back to smoking what they did before. Even just, and I'm not saying just eating a donut is going to make you go back to eating, the way that you used to. I find that with food, it's a little different, but I'm just talking about the neurological part of this and I'm finding there's a hookup between the physiological and the neurological and just the patterns. So anyway, I just thought I would add that on, and I couldn't agree with you more that I do think eating more ketogenic, more healthy fats. I've seen that too in the last couple of years in my own eating, but also I'm focusing my clients on more healthy fats and obviously protein, and healthy carbs like carbohydrate, the vegetables, but really trying to show my clients, oh gosh, like if you're stuck in this track, it's not just you, or you're not just out of control. It's just that this is when you eat these foods, this is what it does to your brain, and it really turns your brain on to wanting more and more and more carbohydrates. So I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, absolutely. So now what happens? Because I think there's the three components: the biochemical, the neurological, and then the emotional piece.
Right.
And let's talk about that brain piece and what people can do on their own. And obviously, if you're struggling, don't try to do it on your own. Find some help, work with Rita, work with me, work with somebody, do some therapy, some EMDR. Take the initiative to help retrain your brain. But what if in case they're in the beginning, they want to try some things on their own, what can they do? Obviously buy Rita's book, which we'll talk about in a minute. What can they do to try retraining their brain when that impulse happens?
Okay, for sure. So let's hop in. So first of all, like I was saying way earlier in this program, I think identity is everything. So first of all, you just want to come at this from this is a problem you're going to solve. And it's not even a problem. It's just a challenge we all have at the end of the day. So you're not alone. Everybody is challenged with this to a certain degree. So really look at it as like, how am I going to, this is a project I'm going to take on, and I'm going to be successful. So come at it from a really powerful place, because that really immediately it's like turning on a switch on your brain. Like your brain all of a sudden it's like, oh, cool, a fun project. I want to get into this, instead of coming at it from shame and like I have to control myself, which basically does not turn your brain on at all. It just repeats the old patterns that you've been stuck into. So make it a project. Look at it as a fun project that you are going to engage in and look forward to it. Now, one of the things that you can do to really set yourself up for success in this project is to have a vision of what it's going to look like to be free of that night eating challenge, right? So what you want to start to do is, instead of it like what you're not going to do, because the brain does not process negatives, you want to really look at like, what would a night look like? Like, what would be my ideal evening? Do I want to do when I come home? You know, maybe I want to go out for a walk, and then I want to eat a healthy dinner, and then I want to enjoy like relaxing in front of the television, but I'll be food free in front of the TV, just seeing myself just relaxing and really truly getting that relaxation versus, you know, overeating in the kitchen. So you want it, or maybe you'll change it up. I solved my night eating challenge many, many years ago. I turned off the television and I started reading, and I started educating myself in other things that I was more interested in. And so you might think, wow, maybe there's something deeper I'm not seeing, that my human needs aren't being fulfilled. And maybe there's an opportunity for me at night to do that. So really open up the door to not just not night eating, but really make this as a creation, like you're creating a new evening that's going to serve you better, like that's going to really serve your self-care on a much deeper level, right? So this is like speaking to JJ's idea of like almost the spiritual thing, because this does engage the dopamine part of the brain, because what we're doing is leveraging dopamine. Right now, your brain has a dopamine track that's like, oh, that's a reward. The popcorn's after dinner is a reward, and the wine's after dinner is a reward. So you have this like this low level reward system that needs to be, or is you're really leveraging your dopamine for that higher level. Our brain loves to see ourselves as powerful. So that is really, you're really leveraging your dopamine brain by creating something, like thinking yourself as a creator of something powerful and new. Then the morning, what you want to start to do in the mornings is like create a little morning meditation. And why do you want to do this in the morning instead of at night? Well, by the time, like I said, by the time you get home, your brain is not able to really take on change. In the morning, when you wake up, your brain is the freshest, right? So we want to, in the morning, before you even it's the easiest thing is just to do it before you get out of bed in the morning. And that would be to just lay in bed for a moment and visualize what you want to do when you get home that night. And in visualizing that, visualize the perfect scenario. Like I said, like, what do you want to create? But also take a moment and think about where the challenging moments in your evening, like maybe it's like that sitting down in front of the TV, and that you always, when the commercial break happens, you want to get up and go get something from the kitchen, right? So even in your visualization, imagine that's going to happen. It's called pre-practicing. Athletes do this all the time. They think about like, where in the game are they going to be challenged? And they create an alternative route. They're really like, they've done studies on this, and they've seen that like athletes, when they're injured, they will continue to practice in their minds, and it's almost as if they hadn't been off the court. So you want to practice and have like your pre-game, meaning your pre-evening practice of what you're going to do, not versus what you're not going to do. You want to create what you're going to do, but also start to think about those moments where you might be a little vulnerable in your evening and really create a plan. Like, and I'm going to dive down a little deeper into this. Like, for instance, if that was me with sitting in the front of the TV and the popcorn, I would even practice like my brain telling me, oh, we'd love some popcorn right now, or I got to go eat some popcorn, or, oh gosh, that popcorn's sitting there in the cupboard, I should go get some. And then I would practice saying, no, remember, we're going to go to bed tonight feeling light and lean and like we really took care of ourselves. I'm literally practicing what I'm going to say to myself ahead of time so that when I get to that moment in the evening, it's already there. Like I already have that vision of me continuing to watch TV or getting up and getting a glass of water from the kitchen and continuing through that moment. And by practicing it ahead of time, you're leveraging your brain's energy so much more than if you were just like, well, I hope I don't do that. Then thinking, after you think that day through, then of course, the other thing that JJ and I both talked about is just making sure you're fed in a powerful way. So I recommend eating something before you go home, like in the afternoon, because I think if we're underfed, like JJ said, if you're eating in a way like you're eating a ketogenic diet, your ability to, your blood sugar does get really much more powerful, so that you can like eat 2 meals a day and you not be hungry and not have cravings. But if you're not on a sort of JJ was talking about, you definitely want to eat something, like eat some protein or some healthy fats in the afternoon around 4 o'clock, so that you're not going home with that empty stomach, so that you're fed and that you don't have to be full. I'm just talking about like that you aren't going home with crashed blood sugar, just because from a neurological standpoint, it's a lot harder to overcome it if you're physiologically hungry and have low blood sugar. It creates a lot of stress in your brain when you have crashed low blood sugar, and you're just like 10 times more apt to overeat if you've had that. So do yourself a favor and make sure you're fed and make sure you have a snack for yourself. Now, after dinner, like let's say you sit down to dinner and you eat a healthy dinner. Again, hopefully earlier that day, you created that powerful vision of what you're going to do. They've done cognitive research studies, and they've seen that people who have a treat at night, like one treat that they've like set aside the calories for, or they've planned ahead of time, and it's a beginning and a middle and an end, like it's one serving, but it's something that they can really look forward to. That is something that has helped people to stay on track. Just the idea of you're going to have one treat at night. And like JJ was saying, it's probably best that it's not a sugary treat or a really refined carbohydrate treat, but it's just something that you enjoy, that feels that is a healthy, nourishing choice, but that you like. And it could be something, maybe you have some whipped cream on berries, or maybe it's a piece of dark chocolate, something that you enjoy, that you can look forward to. And you might have that at the end of dinner, or you might say, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to eat that. But here's my coaching is, do not eat it in front of the TV. So the other thing is, how I talked about identity earlier, you really want to cultivate this, what I would call not an option in front of the TV mindset. When it is not an option, then your brain starts to learn, oh, I don't go there. So when I'm like, I have a little saying, I'm food free in front of the TV. Food free in front of the TV. Why? Because then my brain understands that. It's like, oh, okay, it's not an option. Because if it's if it is an option, oh, I'm going to try not to eat in front of the TV, or, I'll just eat a little popcorn in front of the TV every night. The problem is now your brain is open for negotiation, and it will start to bug you. That dopamine brain is very powerful, and will say, well, you ate that one serving of popcorn, why can't we have a little more? And that part of the brain that drives your night eating is very uninterested in your being happy. Our dopamine brain just wants what it wants when it wants it. So we have to really create a new plan and something that excites your dopamine brain, which is going to bed at night feeling light and lean and powerful. So using that morning meditation is really going to help that, but also having something like, I'm food free in front of the TV, a little mantra that you can say to yourself that really starts to, like, when that part of your brain says, oh, we should eat some popcorn in front of the TV, say, no thanks, I'm food free in front of the TV. And going back to that idea with that JJ brought up also is the idea of fasting. So something that's really interesting about our brain is our brain absolutely loves to do stuff, but it doesn't really understand not doing stuff. So when we're trying not to eat after dinner, the brain really sees that as something that's very deprivational, that we see it as we're taking something away. Versus fasting. If I say, oh, I'm going to fast from the time I finish dinner until breakfast the next morning, or until 11 o'clock the next morning, or whatever time you decide your first meal is, or the first time you eat is, what happens is your brain sees that as being active, doing something. Fasting is doing something, and intermittent fasting, fasting from dinner until breakfast is actually very healthy. You're resting your digestion. JJ, I won't get into it too much because I know you've probably covered it in other podcasts, but this idea of fasting is very, very powerful. And so if you say, I'm now somebody who fasts, you're re-identifying yourself. I'm somebody who fasts from dinner until breakfast. Then you're taking food off the table completely, and that part of the brain will start to go dormant. But it will take your training it, maybe 2, 3, 4 days of just really starting in the morning with that meditation, seeing yourself finishing dinner. Okay, now I see myself fasting. Maybe I allow myself some herbal tea, but no food between dinner and breakfast the next morning. I'm fasting, and I'm being powerful. I'm elevating my health. I'm elevating my digestive tract. I'm elevating my youth hormones. All of those fabulous things that come with fasting. I'm engaging in something very powerful, and you can see that can leverage your dopamine brain to say, ooh, that sounds fun. Yeah, I can really see myself doing that. And ooh, it's going to feel so great to go to bed tonight feeling light and on track with my health goals. I hope that gives you guys some ideas about some really doable, like starting with that meditation in the morning, having an idea that this is a project of power, not something of shame. Really practicing those vulnerable moments ahead of time, having a mantra, I'm food free in front of the TV, either having like a time designated for a treat and then fasting from your treat until the next morning, or fasting from dinner until the next morning, and really seeing this as something you're cultivating and building and creating, versus something like I'm trying not to do, which then just puts it into a negative place. And also sitting with yourself in those feelings, really having some alternative things to do when those feelings start to come up. And really this idea of an inner coach, when we can just allow a feeling to occur and recognize that there's a beginning and a middle and an end to our feelings, and just allow those feelings maybe to come up and to get curious about them. And something that you could absolutely do instead of watching TV is to journal, and just to get all those feelings out of you and just get them on a paper, so you can start to recognize what's going on inside of you. Because often we'll just push it down with food, and we never really see that what's underneath is probably something that we can solve. We can solve pretty much any problem we put in front of ourselves, but if we keep pushing it down with food, we can't begin to solve that problem. So whip out a journal, start writing down your feelings, start writing down what's going on inside you. I could show you 5 boxes of books in my attic of when I was really going through my weight release journey, of all those feelings and emotions. I would just sit and write in the morning, at night. And it really educated me on my own inner life, and it really connected me to myself in a much more powerful way. So I believe in you, and I really believe in your ability to solve any problem that comes in front of you, and find a powerful solution. But we got to just start, one, by believing in ourselves and really tuning into our mind in a much more effective way, and recognize we're not at fault. It's just that culturally we haven't learned to use our brains effectively.
And I do appreciate that you ended on that note about the journaling, because for me, there's that sort of multi-layer approach to something, and there's the science part of it, the spiritual part of it, but then there's the emotional piece of it. And that's something that most people run away from, and they want to avoid. They want that magic pill of, how do I avoid that? What's the trick that turns it off? What is it that I need to be doing or not doing that this doesn't happen anymore? When in reality, it really is about getting comfortable with your feelings and your emotions. And like you said, problem solving them, but being aware of them. So all these impulses, all the things that come with overeating food or doing any kind of addiction that we have, is all about the feelings we don't want to feel. So at the end of the day, we have to eventually go there, because in order for you to really move past that, so that you don't have that impulse anymore and it doesn't keep coming up, we can change our behavior, but it doesn't mean we've released that feeling, or that we've solved that problem. So I know you have a lot more information in your book, and I want you to tell us. And I think if I read correctly, the book includes a downloadable hypnosis and coaching session from you. So why don't you tell everybody about the new book? It's From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss. And I think you can get it on Amazon. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
And tell us a little bit more about what comes along with the book, like any special gifts and stuff.
Sure. So the book is a version of my Shift Weight Mastery process, it's a very successful all-day event that happens in Los Angeles that has a lot of hypnosis and meditation and cognitive techniques, and then a 30-day follow-up process. So the book itself is really a deep journey into, it's really the process that in book form. And it is really from shifting out of this sort of all or nothing, good or bad, on or off a diet that, most of the time when people call me, they're looking for the consistency piece. They know how to eat. They know, they know kind of how to eat. They, enough, they say I can lose weight, but why can't I be consistent? So it really is a deep dive into really shifting your relationship with yourself, communicating with yourself in a more powerful way, and really getting into the 9 skills of weight mastery. So we look at it as a learning and a mastery process, not as like a structure and being on a diet. So the book starts there. So what comes along with the book is there is a whole website that when you get the book that you access, and it has hypnosis sessions that as you're reading the book, you listen to. It's a very specific process that you go through. There's videos on the website. And then when you finish the book, there's actually a 30-day process that you go through that is triggered on the website. So you get an email every day that has hypnosis sessions and meditation and a coaching session from me, so that it is really a journey with the idea that you end that, really in a much more powerful place, being able to be consistent, releasing weight at a rate you decide. Like JJ said, like really creating a more powerful, nourishing, and stabilizing relationship with food. So the foods that you are putting in your body are minimizing addiction to carbohydrates, and really, so that you're craving free and you're feeling like you are in charge of your weight mastery journey. So I right now I'm going through a process. But if you go to my website, www.shiftweightmastery.com, you can sign up. If you want to buy the book now, it's very easy to go through the book. It's a great process. But right now I'm going through a process. I have a Facebook group, and I have a number of people that are going through the book process with me. Every once in a while, I'm going to do that every other month or so. So if you want to go to my website and sign up to be in the next book, the process that is led by me online, I just come on and I do different, in fact, JJ is going to be coming on as part of this group, and she's going to be discussing how to be consistent with exercise. So there's just more perks and bonuses along the way. If you want to come and join the group now, you can, but today is day 1. We're just getting started. So, but go to my website and sign up, and we can get you in the next process and get going on that.
And again, that website is shiftweightmastery.com. Shiftweightmastery.com. And Rita, we'll definitely have you back. I want to talk more about the hypnosis process. Everyone, go get the book From Fat to Thin Thinking on Amazon. Unlock your mind for permanent weight loss, and check out her group, shiftweightmastery.com. Rita, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you, JJ. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about all the stuff you're up to.